being a Black woman who has family that used to pick cotton, in particular, my mother, it's just one of those things that can kind of come off as a little strange, seeing cotton as something that's used as decor.
Welcome to Fat Chat. I'm Annette Richmond, the founder of Fat Girls Traveling. And this series, we are chatting with fellow Fat Girls Traveling members on issues that are important to our community. And today we're going to be chatting with Ashley Carter. I'm super excited. You might recognize her from My Big Fat Fabulous Life. We did a couple episodes of that. But Ashley, how are you, babe?
So I'm doing really well. Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited and I'm kind of sad that I haven't seen you since we recorded those episodes.
I know, that's so crazy. And that was like in 2021 or something like that.
Right.
So that feels like forever ago. And for anyone who doesn't follow Ashley, she is I am Fab Ellis on socials, correct?
Mm-hmm. That is correct.
Amazing. So, but how have you been, babe? I haven't seen you in a few years.
I know, right? I've been really good. I've been really good, just learning to, I guess, spend more time experiencing self-care, taking care of myself, also expanding the creative things that I do, which I'm sure that we'll talk about, and just getting into more things that I love. I've been kind of like really big on satisfying my inner child lately, so that's where I'm at. I hope that you've been doing well, but I know you're doing all the things, girl. So,
I love that, especially the part about satisfying your inner child. And I
Mhm.
feel like a lot of the stuff that I've been seeing lately about this like nostalgia trend, or you know what I mean? People are definitely tapping into that childhood innocence because things are feeling really tough right now.
Very strange time.
So just leaning into as much joy and like childlike energy as possible, that sounds like heaven right now.
It's been enjoyable. It's been enjoyable for me, and we have to find ways to experience joy these days for sure.
Absolutely. And so tell our audience where you're from and like a little bit about what you do and your content.
Okay, absolutely. So I'm actually located in Greensboro, North Carolina, but I'm originally from the small town of Mount Olive, North Carolina, which a lot of people know for Mount Olive pickles. A lot of people don't think that's a real place, but it is a real place.
I do
But
know those Mount Olive pickles. Those be hitting. I do know those
okay.
ones.
Okay.
Yes.
And tons of variety. Okay. If you see us in the stores, it's tons of varieties. Okay. People know me online for being someone who is really into thrifting and sustainable fashion. I am one of those people who loves to rewear pieces in my closet. I love colorful, fun clothing and showing women how I wear that and wear it multiple ways. And really big on showing women that there are plus size clothing pieces in the thrift store, in the vintage shops. They're there because plus size people have always existed.
Absolutely.
And then also really just showing women the importance of being authentic to yourself and taking care of yourself.
I love that. And I've been following you for many years now. And as I mentioned in the beginning, the last time we saw each other was My Big Fat Fabulous Life. And that was a really cool opportunity for us to kind of have, because you've done some of my fat camp retreats.
Right.
You had done fat camp before we did fat camp for My Big Fat Fabulous Life. So it was a nice opportunity to share a little bit with the world about that experience. But there were a couple things, a few important conversations that were cut that I feel like I would love to kind of share not only with our audience, but like with the world, especially during Black History Month.
Yeah.
And yeah, one of the conversations specifically was the conversation that we had about cotton. And I felt like it was a big learning experience for me because, like, as someone who was working with producers to find the property and all of those kind of things, it didn't even register to me to like look for any type of artwork or decor that might be offensive until after we had that conversation. And so if you don't mind, I'd love for you to kind of share what you shared during that retreat.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think we were all around the table having breakfast one morning, if I remember correctly. And we saw that there was decor in the middle of the table. It included like a little like cotton stalks, I think, with cotton
Yeah,
on
it was
them.
like Cotton plants,
Yeah,
yeah.
like cotton plants, yes, and it
Mhm.
was in the middle, like, little decor piece, and it in the moment, I know for me, people may interpret that different ways because we have people who go to visit these places and they're from all over. But me being someone who was raised in the South, kind of seeing cotton as something that's used as decor is kind of it's kind of one of those things that doesn't always make sense to me. I guess a lot for me being a black woman who has family that used to pick cotton, in particular, my mother, it's just one of those things that can kind of come off as a little strange. And while we were there, I actually shared with everyone that my mom used to pick cotton, and I also learned recently used to pick tobacco as well in her teens, of course, as a way to make money. And I remember people there, they were a little shocked at that because I think a lot of people think that those things ended with slavery. But no, there was always people that still needed to perform those tasks. And especially in the South, you would have Black teenagers and Black people who still did that well after slavery was over.
Yeah, that was a huge learning opportunity for me as someone who hosts events and frequently like rents these properties that are decorated however the owner feels fit. And also as someone from California who kind of like I didn't grow up in the South, so I didn't really have that same connotation with it. And so
Right,
when we had that conversation, it was very like light bulb moment, because there is a lot of debate around this in travel spaces in specific, and people saying, like, oh, well, I don't understand why it's such a big deal to have cotton decor and different things like that, or even some of these caricatures, like this racist memorabilia. There are some people that collect that kind of stuff just because it's interesting and historical, and they'll create little kitschy decor items in their house and then put those houses for rent, not knowing that like someone who might rent it potentially is a person of color and it could be offensive. They don't
right.
consider that. And so it was definitely a learning opportunity for me. And it's something that like I look into now as soon as I like enter a rental property, if I'm hosting a retreat or something. It's about sensitivity training. And that's kind
Yeah.
of my biggest takeaway from that situation.
Yeah, and I agree with you because you never know how someone is going to interpret that. I'm someone in my 30s. And so while I did not necessarily have to experience that, I have, a parent who has, and you never know how they're going to feel. So sometimes I could see why that would be important for you to kind of know what types of things are in these homes or wherever you're traveling, especially as you have groups, because you never know how it will affect different people. And like you said, you're from California. That's not something I would necessarily expect for you to know or even have looked for when you were, looking at that place that we were going to stay. So, it's never something that I feel offended by, but I know that it's something that people have to be sensitive to.
Absolutely. I definitely agree that there needs to be some sensitivity. And when you shared, like after you shared your history with the group, I definitely looked into like more history around that and found started researching like sharecropping. And I learned that like you said, a lot of people think that like picking cotton and it was industrialized and then people didn't have to do it anymore, and that's a
Mhm.
complete fallacy. Like
Right.
people were picking cotton until 1960, and
Mhm.
people think that it ended years and years ago, you know what I mean, but it hasn't. And there's still lots of instances where there's things still written into our legal documentation that in ways still enslaves people. And so it's really important for us to be aware
Mhm.
of our history and be aware of what's going on in the world, especially right now.
Absolutely. And I know it was so, as I was sharing that with you all, it was so interesting because some of the other people that were in the space, like the look of shock on people's faces when when I said that, and I was like, "Oh wow!" And it's a reminder too that even people who may be from the same areas or whatever, we all have different experiences, and so it's so important to, I guess, hold that space and allow yourself to always be open to learning, and also, like you said, having that sensitivity as well.
Absolutely. And I feel like it's also important, like, as someone who is hosting something or someone who produced something, to also try not to feel like offended. You know what I mean? If something happens and you realize that like you've unintentionally offended someone, hopefully that person understands that it was unintentional, like
Yeah,
you did,
yeah.
but all you can do is like try your best and go in with, positive intention, and people will pick up on that. But getting defensive or getting aggressive because someone shares with you that like something unintentionally triggered them or made them feel away, that's not the way to move. And
Mhm.
especially around things as sensitive as like the history of slavery in America, you know?
Right.
And it's it's a very nuanced conversation, and just like we've said previously, like just because you're from the south and I'm from the north, we've had different lived experiences and things hit you differently than they would hit me.
Mhm, mhm.
And so that was another like huge learning opportunity for me in that situation.
Yeah, and I'm grateful that we were able to talk about it. I hate that it wasn't shared on a broader spectrum, but I'm grateful that we were able to talk about it because especially like 2020, 2020, 2021, that was a very sensitive time. It still is. But a lot has been going on and I'm grateful we were able to have that conversation while we were there.
So am I. And yeah, it was unfortunate that this was one of the conversations that didn't air,
Yeah.
but I feel like it's so powerful, and it was something that I wanted to share with the community, but it's important to hear it from you, because it's not my story to tell. So I definitely want to thank you for just being able to like open up this conversation, because I feel like it's so important. Um, and then I feel like there's also another level to that when it comes to like these different pieces of art, or this caricature art. And there's one museum that I went to in Rochester, and I'm
Mhm.
going to check the name, but they had this really cool exhibit called Objectively Racist: How Objects and
Mhm.
Images Perpetuate Racism and What We Can Do to Change It.
Mhm.
And I'll share some of my favorite images in a blog post, and I'll link that in the caption. But it was just really interesting to see how depictions of like Black babies in comparison to white babies, and artwork, or even sheet music, how sheet music would have like terrible depictions of Black people on them just for fun.
Yeah. And I know you and I were recently talking about this as someone who often goes thrifting and often goes to vintage stores. I actually end up seeing a lot of I think we call it Americana memorabilia. Yes, that's what it's actually some people call it. But it has a lot of it has a racist connotation. But the interesting thing is that when you're going to estate sales, a lot of times I see things like that there or in pictures of what will be available to purchase at these sales. And I've been told that a lot of times those are the first things to sell because people do look at them as collector's items, which is so odd in a sense. But yeah.
I agree. It's completely odd, and it's one of those things where clearly their biases are showing, but if these people are considering, using those spaces for a VRBO or an Airbnb or something like that, if they're planning on putting that kind of art in a guest room and potentially inviting guests to stay in that room, they
Hmm.
need to consider the impact of other people seeing that. It's
Yeah.
like they think that it's cute and kitschy and Americana, but like it could trigger people,
Yeah.
and it's an important conversation, I think. And it's something that people need to consider. And I feel that like it's almost as if they don't think that we're going to be in these spaces, and that's why they don't consider it.
Hmm. It's funny because I think just in life, when we're looking at marketing or we're looking at different things online, there are so many times where we look at things where we realize where I don't know if Black people were even considered when this was being created. And a lot of times, when you see people have these types of things in their homes, it is kind of that jarring reminder that sometimes people don't even think about us, don't think that we're going to be in these spaces, don't think that it could possibly be offensive to someone. And I think that's unfortunate and that's sad because I think in 2024 it would be a different space, but it's still very prevalent and it's crazy.
And it's actually 2025, my girl. Like it's a
It's been the longest January I've ever experienced in my life. Like, girl, oh my
oh my
goodness.
goodness. Yeah, it has been very long this January. And Black History Month is coming up, which is why we're having this important conversation. And something that you mentioned during our pre interview chat was like weddings at plantations, which is something I've not had to experience, but I know that like being in the South, that's like a common thing almost.
Yeah, it's very common. And while I have never been invited to a wedding at a plantation, it's something, you often see and read about and causes a lot of controversy. Because I know for me, I've visited a couple of plantations, one in particular in Charleston, that is absolutely, it's a beautiful space to see, but it's also like, okay, there's slave quarters here. There's so much history here to see and experience. And so while you're experiencing the grounds and learning the history and seeing this beautiful place that they've made it into, it seems like, okay, this is a place of reverence. This is a place of significance and history. But wait, people have weddings here? Like, why? Like, it doesn't seem like it would be. It's controversial for some people, and some people in the South are so used to it. But just because people are used to it doesn't mean that it should be okay. It's a place of history and honoring the people who have unfortunately lost their lives. And I don't think that, having these weddings there really it shouldn't be the place for that.
I absolutely agree. And I feel like I'm an energy girly and it's all about energy. And so many people were dehumanized and tortured and murdered in those spaces that I don't see how someone could have a joyful experience there.
Mhm.
And it's interesting the way that history often repeats itself unless we can actually look at it objectively. And I feel
Mhm.
like that's what's missing in a lot of ways. And I feel like honestly, it's a lack of not just consideration, but education when it comes to DEI. And that brings me to everything that's happening right now with DEI. And I know you're a fashion girly, but like some of our favorite fashion spots are deciding to like not support our community. Like what are your thoughts on that?
Well, it's interesting because this is something I actually talked about a few months ago with another creative. And it was an interesting conversation that we had because, being in fashion, I have worked with some brands who around 2021, 2022 were very big on body diversity. And I think a lot of times people don't also realize when we're saying DEI, that also includes various bodies as well as being inclusive of different races as well. And so,
Genders, ages,
right, all of
ability, physical abilities, all of this. It's not just about
right.
race.
Right, all of that. And so, I've seen companies that I actually worked with who were all about plus sizes actually completely stop promoting plus sizes. We've seen yeah, who were gung ho for plus sizes and body inclusivity now take all of that off of their page and act like it doesn't exist. We've seen brands completely take plus sizes out. We've seen brands who are no longer working with minority brands a priority. And it's really disheartening because I'm like, here we are in 2025, but we're regressing. That doesn't really make sense. And I know for me, in particular, seeing what Target has decided to do has been probably one of the most strangest experiences and kind of hurtful experiences too, because, it's funny, I haven't really talked about this a lot online as of yet. And it hasn't been on purpose. I really wanted to kind of get my thoughts together since this is something that has just happened. But I know for me, I've shopped at Target since I was in college. I've been out of college now for almost 20 years. And so it's like for a brand that I relied on so much, so heavily, that was very into honoring Black businesses, honoring Black creatives, because of course, during Black History Month, they would allow people to submit things for them to sell in their stores for different contests. It's really disheartening, because it's like, okay, you were one of the places that I really relied on when it came to fashion or some of my everyday expenses. If you don't care about me as a consumer, you don't care about the Black owned brands that you house there, it's not a priority, then you obviously just don't care about me or the other people that look like me.
I get that, and I feel that so deep because, like you said, specifically during Black History Month, they always have new, fresh products. They're
Mhm.
always collaborating with new brands that also have their own collections. So it's like if you like what they collaborated with Target doing, then you can now go and shop their like
Right,
main brand. And it's kind of like a pipeline to a lot of these smaller Black owned businesses. And there's a ton of products that I would get because I live in Mexico. So
right.
it's like I don't live in a place that has Target, but when I go back to the US, it was one of the first places I would go. And my best friend would also get really cute, like Black History Month things. I remember
Mhm.
I got like this beautiful journal and all these amazing things that once a year Target has. And we look forward to that, you
Right.
know. My friends will hoard it for me and wait until I visit from Mexico to receive it. And so it's definitely disheartening. And it's something that, like, I'm not willing to give my hard earned money to if they're not willing to consider our needs or consider our creatives and our small business owners, you know?
Yeah, and I definitely understand that. I know so many people have different stances on it, because there are some people who are like, "Hey, I'm not shopping here at all anymore." And then you have people who are like, "Okay, hold on, hold on. We still need to support the Black owned brands that are there, because what may happen, as the wonderful Miss Tabitha Brown was talking about in a recent video, she was talking about how what'll happen is, if we stop supporting these Black owned brands that are there, of course, the profits may plummet. And of course, they're going to pull them from the shelves, because they're going to say, hey, these items are not performing. And that's, sometimes what people, these larger places want to happen. And we want to see Black owned businesses succeed. And so I know for me, I'm still in a very difficult place, because I do feel like I will still support the Black owned businesses that are there. But I really have started to think, is this a place where I'm going to go for my necessities? Because I do feel hurt by the this decision that they decided to make.
You're absolutely right, Ashley. And I feel like as a community, we do need to be more strategic about it. And it's like we can't just, oh, everyone do this or everyone do that. And I did see that video from
Mhm.
Tabitha, and people have been having conversation around that, like supporting the Black owned businesses in those spaces because companies might use it as an excuse not to move forward with Black owned brands or even popular Black owned brands that are selling in the future because of XYZ, try to
Right.
find some loophole to not cater to our community and to not make the things that we need accessible to us. And so it's more than just, okay, I'm not going to shop there for a
Mhm.
lot of people. But luckily for me, with my ass living in Mexico, girl, I could just be
Right.
like, no, you know what I mean? Like, it's an easy solution for me because we don't even have Target over here, you know? But it's one of those situations because I know for a lot of us, Target felt like a more sustainable option versus like Walmart and some of these other places. It felt like it was really supporting these small businesses and having these collaborations that would oftentimes blow up, you know what I
Right.
mean? And give these smaller designers even a bigger platform from these collaborations. And so, more than anything, I'm sad because as someone who did go to school for fashion and have studied, you know, Walmart, Target, most of these brands as case studies. Target was one of the brands that we always said was doing it right, you know? And it's
Right.
just unfortunate now that like they're on the wrong side of history on this one and it feels like if they can take it out, they were willing to take it out instead of supporting a community that's supported you. Like you said, that you've been shopping there for the last 20 plus years.
Right.
Same with me. You know what I mean? And so it's really unfortunate. It feels like, again, they're not considering how this is going to impact other communities, other marginalized communities. Maybe they're considering their bottom line, but they're not considering the human angle, you know?
Yeah, I agree with you. And another thing, I wanted to just point out really quickly is one thing I had been so impressed with Target before this came about was the fact that they were partnering with so many Black creatives on actual collaborations like the Future Collective, like with Kalana Barfield and different designers that they've had. And I'm like, that was something that was so, while you do see collaborations with other people, it was so innovative because this was like, okay, these are collaborations with Black people and different creatives and designers that are creating affordable pieces that are on trend that would go all the way to a 4XL, and you don't see that in a lot of places. And so it's just like it's like we said, disheartening. And also with their Black History Month collection that came out like 2 days after this was announced, they don't even have all of the items available in all sizes like they used to. And it's like, okay, not only did you say this right before the Black History Month collection came out, you also didn't make it available in all the sizes like you normally do. That's crazy.
That's so frustrating because that is another positive that we loved about Target. It's like you could go in with your straight size Betsy and y'all could both get a similar look. You know what I mean?
Right,
Because Target would make pieces either that go up to 4X or pieces that are similar. You know what I mean? Maybe
right.
it's a crop moto jacket and it has similar details to the straight size one. And now it's an opportunity for fat girls to go in and have this shopping experience with their friends that's like so difficult to have, and it's a frustrating reality for us, but it feels like one more company doesn't see us, one company that we were hoping and we were relying on because they have made us feel seen for so long,
Right.
and now they're just turning a blind eye to our community. And that's really disheartening because both you and I know our money spins just like every other community's money, you
Okay.
know?
Yeah, exactly, exactly. And I do hope in some way, some form or fashion, maybe this will encourage people to maybe to do things more sustainably. I know for me, I kind of wanted to take a step back from being so into consumerism anyway, like spending a whole bunch of money this year. That was something that I already wanted to take a step back from. And so I'm like, maybe this is that push in that direction. And I've always been a thrifter. And with the way we're seeing how fast fashion can sometimes end up in these in these big piles, these dumps and things. And it's like, okay, wait, maybe this can kind of gear us in the right direction and maybe consume less and enjoy the things that we have, and also start, maybe thrifting or going to consignment places or wherever where we can find the things that we want.
That is such a positive outlook. And like, I don't know if people already follow you, but you are a fashion killer. Like, if y'all
Thank you.
can't tell, like, Ashley turns looks, okay?
Thank you.
And I love that you are so into thrifting and being able to find sustainable pieces. And I used to work at a secondhand store, and so I
Oh.
definitely have, my thrifting days as well. I'm a San Francisco girl. Come on, you know.
Mhm. Okay.
Come on, Buffalo Exchange, don't play. Um,
I love
um,
it.
yes, but it's one of those things where it can be difficult though as a fat person to
Mm.
thrift. And so, do you have any tips for plus size girlies who want to get into thrifting and who want to shop more sustainably but are finding it difficult to find pieces in their size?
Yeah, so absolutely. So one of the first things I will say going into the thrift store in a plus size body, don't necessarily always pay attention to the numbers on the tags. Um that's number 1, because number 1, let me also make it clear. Our sizes are there. However, there can be even more pieces and options for us because there are a lot of items that have stretch. There are a lot of items that may not even have a label. You have no idea how many times I go to the thrift store and people have actually cut out the label completely. So it's like, I think one of the important thing to know is you have to know your body, and knowing your body may even mean knowing what types of materials you like. So maybe if you like shirts that have a certain blend, kind of knowing what that blend is, maybe even also measuring your body, which I know may sound like, okay, that sounds kind of daunting. I promise you it's not, because anytime you go to a plus size retailer online, they will show you a lot of times how to get the measurement for your bust, how to get the measurement for your waist, how to get the measurement for your hips. So if you can do that, take some time to do that. All you have to do is go to that thrift store and look for pieces, maybe even measure them, check and see if it has stretch. Um, Also, checking the men's department as well. A lot of times we think, okay, well, even if you dress very feminine, a lot of times things like button-ups or beautiful sweaters or very classic blazers are in the men's section. And so that gives you a whole nother realm of an area to shop and not just shop in the women's. I find that for me, the main things I can always find at the thrift store are really great sweaters, blazers. I can usually find dresses, sometimes even skirts, pretty much almost anything. But those are like the main four things I find. But no matter what your style is, there is something for you. You just have to go in with an open mind.
Those are such great tips, and a couple call outs that you mentioned just from my experience working in a secondhand store.
Mhm.
The store that I worked in, we specifically cut out the tags. Some
Oh.
stores, yeah, some stores don't necessarily want you to know what
Mhm.
brand it was, especially if it's like Forever 21 or Express or Gap, one of those kind of like general basic brands. They'll usually clip the or some stores will clip those tags. And because those tags are clipped, when things are put back on the racks, they're put in the wrong section. They're put in the wrong sizes. So don't stay only in your section or in your
Right.
size when you're scanning through. Like look at this as a treasure hunt, and you're gonna leave with some treasure, babes, you know? And it's going to take some investigation and maybe trying some stuff on, you know. Some things that I love to thrift for are boots, because I
Mm.
love a good pair of boots that are already worn in, you
Oh, yeah.
know. And accessories are nice because they're usually like cool and dated, so you can tell they're from the 60s or from the 80s, and they kind of give that really big splash of that trend that you're going for.
Mhm.
um, and it's just a fun way to try a fun new trend without investing so much money into it. And like you were saying, maybe try some androgynous stuff. Go into the men's department. Maybe get a vest, or you know what I mean, for
Yeah.
some layering, different things like that. Trying fun little accessories and mix it up, even for like home decor. You know, like we started this whole thing with like home
Yeah.
decor, but I love thrifting home decor. Like most of the stuff in my apartment is thrifted. Here in Mexico, we don't really have thrift stores like that.
Hmm.
People will sell their secondhand stuff like at flea markets, you know,
Okay.
that they have on Sunday. So, you know, it's kind of like a farmer's market or a flea market kind of thing like that. But they will have secondhand stores for furniture. And
Mhm.
usually, since I live in a touristy area, it's furniture from hotels that, you know what I mean, that
Mm.
they're redesigning the hotel, and now they don't need that mirror or that wall art. So like even this wall art next to me it's thrifted, you know?
Oh, yeah.
And so a lot of my home decor is thrifted. It's a fun, cool way to like add a pop of color or a vintage edge to something without spending a ton of money and feeling like you're doing something good for the world, the community, you know?
Yeah, I love that because it's funny because my mom, that's all she thrifts is home decor. Like her whole house is
It's
thrifted.
great. It's
Yeah.
great. Yeah.
I will say, I know for me, I especially like things like plates and stuff like that. Oh, I love thrifting like cups and stuff. Because they have some of the most beautiful pieces.
Yes, and like it's timeless stuff that they
Right.
actually don't make now because it would cost too much money for them to make it
Exactly.
now, you know? And so definitely if you're into thrifting, look into some of the more classic things. Like I remember, I think there's a it's called, what is it called? Neon glass, or it's some Jupiter Mercury glass. It's called Mercury glass. And it's this type of glass. It looks like it has like glitter in it, but
Okay.
it's this kind of glass that was, they made a lot of drinking glasses and vases and like lamps and stuff with mercury glass in the 60s. And it had like a little comeback in the early 2000s. And it's one of those things where I'm like, I love mercury glass. It's one of those random things that like they don't even make now. It's probably toxic in some way, but like if you can find it and you're not eating it, it's just like,
Yeah.
art. It's beautiful,
Yeah. I love that. Not toxic though, but yeah.
let me do some research, girl. I ain't trying to speak on nothing I didn't research, but it is
Yeah.
called mercury glass, and it's beautiful, and it's something that like when I'm thrifting and looking for like home goods, it's something that I look for. So,
Yeah.
um, one of the things I feel it can be tricky though for people is like figuring out what their personal style is, and I feel like that's one of the reasons why it's kind of effortless for you to kind of go from designer to, secondhand and make it just look so easy because you have kind of like a signature style, you know?
Yeah.
And can you kind of share a little bit about like how you found your signature style and like how someone would go about doing that?
Yeah. Well, one thing I think is really important to say is that finding your personal style definitely takes time. And there are going to be some good moments and maybe some not so good moments, but it definitely takes time.
It's
Um,
fun. It's fashion, right?
yeah,
There's so many crazy things happening in the world. Let's have a little fun with some fashion,
I
y'all.
know. And it's so funny that you say that because I think if anything, that's one of the main things I try to tell people. Have fun and take chances with your style because number one, we only get one life. And I meet so many people, so many women who are like, "Oh, I wish I could have fun with my style or I wish I could dress like this." The reality is you can. No one is stopping you but you, and it's important. It doesn't matter where you live. Oh, I live in a small town. Who cares? You could be the flyest person in the small town. It doesn't matter.
That part. You're like, I know, I'm the flyest person in my town. Let them
Like,
know, sis.
right, like it doesn't matter. But I think really when it comes to like finding your personal style, one tip I always give people is if you're trying to find your personal style, name at least two to three adjectives that would describe the style that you would like. So like for me, I'm someone who really values comfort. I really like colorful pieces and I really love eclectic style. So for me, when I'm looking, whether it be at the store or whether it be at a thrift store, or if I'm looking for inspiration on Pinterest, those are things I'm always looking for because I'm like, does it fall into those adjectives? And again, it doesn't have to, but for someone who's really trying to navigate finding their style, that really helps because as you're looking at outfits, you're like, okay, wait, that does kind of fit into what these adjectives, these things that I'm looking for. So maybe this could work. And also, Pinterest is a wonderful place. Pinterest is great.
It's good for inspiration. I've seen you and a lot of other creatives kind of like finding a look that they want to create in their size and like finding creative ways to make it work for them. And I love that. I find that very fun as someone that has a fashion background. It's like a
Right.
challenge, you know?
Yes. And I think too, I see so many times people will be like, well, this person isn't plus size. I need to see it on a plus size body. I think that that is a valid thing, but I also think it's really fun too to sometimes take something, that inspiration, and make it your own. Because a lot of times you may not see it on a plus size body, but you can be the plus size body that somebody needs to see it on. So recreate
That part, that
it.
part. And it's really interesting because I know for me over the years my style has definitely changed. I'm going to be 40 this year and so yes girl. And so I definitely am doing much more comfort over like trend. Um I definitely am wearing my things more times and finding new ways to wear things, giving things new life. But I also feel like it's super important to give yourself permission to change your style,
Mm.
because sometimes there was a certain, like, there's some people that I know that, like, maybe since high school, they've been wearing all black and they feel like now they're in their 30s and they still have to wear all black because that's just what they've always done, but
Mm-hmm.
it's okay to add a pop of color or to try something new, to see if you like it. And if you don't, you can go back to the thing, that comfort space.
Right.
But I feel like the only real way to kind of find your signature style is to try new things and to get outside of your style comfort zone,
Right. Right.
I also think a fun way to do it could be like uniform dressing. Like
Mm-hmm.
some people have a certain uniform that they have to wear for work, a blazer, pants, a certain
Mm-hmm.
type of shoe, but maybe you're adding a printed top in there, or maybe it's a colorful handbag or
Yeah.
something. Or maybe deciding what to wear is too tricky and you want to try uniform dressing and you want to be more of a jeans and a t-shirt kind of person that can add a simple scarf or a simple accessory and make it a complete look. But we don't have to overcomplicate it if we don't want to. If you
Exactly.
want your signature style to be clean and simple, go for it.
Yeah. Yeah. One last tip that I shared also when it comes to finding your personal style on TikTok, I shared the fact that when you are trying something new, whether it's a crisp, clean look, no matter what the look is, if you're trying something new, I always suggest that people take a picture of themselves in the outfit and then take a moment and really kind of look at it and ask yourself, did you like this outfit? If you could change something about the outfit, what would you change? And just taking time to reflect on the outfit and possibly even keeping it, because some people find that having like a catalog of some of their looks helps them with like the outfit formulas or the uniform, like you mentioned. And it really just kind of helps you say, okay, did I really like this? Especially when you're trying something new. I find it helpful.
That is such a great call out, Ashley, because on one of my recent group trips, one of my travelers shared that like she took a picture of all of her outfits before the trip so that
Mhm.
she knew exactly what to pull out, she kind of like pre-styled everything
Mhm.
and packed everything in a way that like, oh, I had already pre-organized this dress with this, leggings or shorts or whatever kind of thing. And so I was like, okay, cute. And like she had pictures. She was showing us the pictures of
Yeah.
her just in her room trying it on. And she was like, with that shoe. And I was like, girl, that's
Right.
such a great tip. And it's like a time hack, you know?
Yeah, because especially for somebody who doesn't want to think about things, it's like that's perfect.
Yeah, if you don't want to think about it and it's like you made this combination that you
Right.
love, like this dress with those shoes and that headband or whatever, take a picture of it and that could be one of your go-to looks for a
Right.
birthday party or a date night or something like that. So finding little like cheat codes is such a great tip for people to find fun ways to figure out what their signature style might be.
Yeah, I agree.
Thank you so much, Ashley. This has been such a not only informative conversation, but important. I feel
Yeah.
like reminding people to not only be considerate of other people, but have that sensitivity around it. Like, if you do say the wrong thing or you do unintentionally do the wrong thing, it's okay.
Right.
We're all human, but it's also okay to apologize and to learn from things and to express like, hey, I didn't know, I'm sorry, instead of getting defensive about stuff. And I feel like it's going to be a hard few years coming up, but it's just one of those things that we need to remind each other like we're all human and it's okay to make mistakes, but we also have to be considerate of each other and sensitive to each other that that mistake that we accidentally made might have impacted someone in a way that we didn't intend, you know?
Yeah, I agree. And to always continuously be open to learning. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I learned so much from that conversation that we had and this conversation. So I want to thank you again for just sharing some of your history and some of your family history with us. This was so incredible. And yeah, before we wrap up this fat chat, is there anything else you want to add?
Yeah, well, again, thank you so much for having me. And as we end this, I just want to encourage everybody to take care of yourselves. I said in the very beginning that taking care of my inner child is very important to me, but take care of yourself mentally, physically, emotionally, and show love to yourself. That's what I want to share.
Thank you so much for that reminder, Ashley. I feel like it's something that we all need to hear right now. And happy Black History Month, babe.
Yes.
The people. Exactly. Thank you again and have a great day.
All right, you too. Bye.